You are listening to the CWL podcast. Are you ready? Hey, everybody. How are you guys doing? I'm Kate. I am the host of the Creative Women's League podcast, and I'm so excited to have you here. I always am. I freaking love Wednesdays because these episodes come out. It's pretty nerdy, I know. I don't mean to be so nerdy. I just love you guys. I can't help it. If this is your first episode, welcome. Hello. I'm so happy to have you here. CWL is a fantastic community where we are dishing up motivation, inspiration, and of course, community. Every Monday, you're going to get that motivation with our Mindful Monday episodes. Every Wednesday, you will hear another inspirational badass woman tell you their story, just like today. And if you are interested in the community aspect, please head over to Instagram at Creative Women's League. Join us over there. There's a lot of awesome discussion happening and even more awesomer discussion happening over in the Facebook group. So just go ahead on Facebook, search Creative Women's League. You'll see the page. You can go ahead and like that, but definitely join the group. There's a lot that goes on in there in conjunction with what happens on the episodes, but it's also just a place for you to ask for ideas, get suggestions, share funny memes with awesome women. So I love it. Go join it. And I have shared with you guys that the Creative Women's League is coming out with a blog, but I don't want to be writing the blog all by myself. That's not the idea here. So I need you. I need you. Head over to the CWL.com, all one word, all together. And under the Hey Bloggers tab, there will be information for you on how to submit your blog to our blog that's coming up. I'm very excited. I've said blog a lot, though. That was a lot of saying the word blog, but join the blog for us, blog. So every week, you guys do me a favor by sharing a review of the podcast. If you are listening via iTunes, you can review the podcast there. It's fantastic. Reviewing the podcast in iTunes means we get seen by more and more people. It's a fantastic thing to do for any podcast or app that you use. It's super helpful. It is monumentally more helpful if that podcast is a small one like this one. So head over to iTunes, leave a review there. I've had some people ask how else they can review if you don't listen via iTunes. The best way to do it then is head into Facebook, leave a review there, and I will still give you a shout out right here on the podcast. That's what's next. I'm going to shout out to this listener. Now, be sure to give your Instagram name or your Etsy name or your business name so I can give you a little gift of exposure as a thank you, a big thank you for doing this favor for me. This review reads, funny, insightful, and powerful. 5 stars. Kate's work to showcase women who are making their mark doing things they love is a wonderful look at all the various ways women are getting things done. Thank you so much. Rad with a B. That's my boyfriend. I can tell you exactly where. He didn't include an Instagram name, but I just realized that was the one I was reading. So I can tell you where to find him if you really want to find him. I mean, I don't know. I can tell you. I can tell you he does run his own podcast, The Orlando Soccer Show, if you're interested. We're a little podcasting couple because we're just such millennials. So let's get into the good stuff, shall we? Today I got to talk with the fantastic designer, Suzy Ultman. Now, I never know how these interviews are going to go. I talk to these awesome women just a little bit via email, but it's always nerve-wracking the first moment you get on the phone. And from the second Suzy and I started talking, I just felt so at ease. I knew that this was going to be a phenomenal episode. She's calm, cool, and collected, incredibly funny, and boy, oh boy, did she give you guys lots of amazing advice in this episode. Towards the end, there is extremely direct advice on how to deal with big companies, on how to negotiate differently, I freaking love it. I'm going to shut up now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Here's Suzy. Hi, Suzy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. So where are you calling us from?
I am calling you from Columbus, Ohio.
That's wonderful. I've never been to Ohio.
It's an interesting state. You know, we're Midwest, but we're very close to the East.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a combination of thoughts and ideas. I'm originally from the East Coast, and I've lived all over the place. This is my first time. Well, I've been here for 8 years now, but my first time living Midwest. So it's been interesting taking in the culture of the place. It's also close to the South, so it's a really interesting state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get because you guys get kind of, I think I've heard, I don't know. So you got to correct me on this, but you get a lot of the heat of the summer, but you also get the snow in the winter, and you have kind of a crazy climate, right?
We do. It's kind of a mishmash of everything. Fortunately, we're not quite as cold as our northern friends like in Chicago.
Yeah.
It stays a little bit warmer, but we're not quite as warm as people to the south of us. So yeah, it is kind of a total mishmash. My kids are really funny. They're you never know what to expect here. It can change in a day. You can go through 3 different climates, basically.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's different. You know, I always felt like on the coast, it was a little bit more predictable. Especially, I lived in Portland, Oregon for some time. I feel like on the West Coast, just you kind of know what's coming. So it seemed like the most predictable there. And then on the East Coast, they have time to guess what is coming. I can't believe we're talking about the weather right off the bat. But on the East Coast, they have time to see what's traveling across the country to let you know what's going to come. And in the middle of the country, it's just everything's a big scramble.
Yeah, just surprise.
Yeah. Fortunately, in Columbus, we're in this interesting zone where the tornadoes tend to go north and south of us. But we still get these crazy spring storms, which I still am not used to. Not having not grown up here, the storms in the Midwest are no other. It's lightning and thunder for can be up to a full hour just on top of each other rolling through, and it can be a little scary if you're not used to it.
That's what Florida's like. I've had podcasts where it's straight up apocalypse in the background. And I'm just well, you guys, maybe that sounds nice. I don't know. People put on rain CDs to fall asleep, so maybe it sounds nice. I don't know.
Yeah, when we first moved here, my youngest wanted to be in the basement a lot.
Oh, I bet.
Just for safety. Yeah. Oh. He's gotten a little more accustomed to it, but it was hard the first couple of years.
Yeah, I bet.
We had the Weather Channel on a lot to show him where the tornadoes were and that we were in a different area.
Well, before we get started into, because I want to know where you grew up and things like that, can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. My name is Suzy, and I call myself an illustrator, designer, and crafty girl. And I would also say, I think lately I just generally call myself a maker of things. Because I think the deeper I get into my work and into my just being on this planet, I think that my passion is just every day, just that inner desire to make something.
Yeah.
Whether it's, baking at the end of the day or creating a piece of art, I think there's something about me that has to make something. And it's very therapeutic. It makes me happy. It brings me joy. And I've been like that ever since I can remember.
That was going to be my question. Have you always been one of those people who's very creative and has to be making?
Yeah, and I've written about it in other interviews, and I've talked about it before. But I think my mom. I grew up in a house. My mom was kind of the typical 70s household where my mom would sew matching dresses like for herself and me and my sisters. So she had this great sewing room with like a closet full of, fabrics, and then drawers full of buttons and stuff that I would love to go through. And, so like take this sewing needle and thread and sew stuff up. And she baked and I would bake with her. And then my dad had this great wood shop, and he had a lot of just like hand tools, probably from the 50s, I'm guessing. I think they might have even been his dad's. And so there were girls in my family. He didn't have any sons. So he just gave us the hand tools, and he would build stuff, and he'd give us a block of wood, and we would just sit there for like an hour with a little hand drill and drill stuff. So we were exposed to a lot of that. And it just was a space that was very comfortable for me. And for my younger sister as well, my older sister, she loved to read and ride horses, and she's more in kind of her, like, I think she might laugh if she heard this, like, sci-fi fantasy world.
Oh yeah.
She ended up going into theater. She was very creative too. She was like into writing and reading, and that was more her space. But I was very much into making. I made dolls at a young age. If there was just anything I could put together, I would do that. And it made me, and I was very, very happy. So yeah, as long as I can remember, I was just always making stuff. So as I get deeper into my, like, thinking about my profession, I just think of it as making.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like, here today I'm going to draw, and now I'm going to, like, this client I'm doing this for. It's just, okay, today I'm making, because that helps me find my inner self, and then whatever I'm doing, I'm happy doing it. And I think that's really important to approaching the work. My agent told me something a long time ago that I think is very true, that people are attracted to your joy. And I think that's true. I think people, if you are happy in what you're doing, people definitely connect with that. And it's hard to fake that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. We've talked about that on a few episodes where, when you have people like ripping you off, or, you just feel like I don't really, like, my stuff is all over the place. It's like, if it's authentically you, and if it's authentically what you love, nobody can really rip it off, because it's coming from your being, from your core. Yeah.
And I have to clarify that I have been through difficult times, but when I'm doing my work, that's where I can find my happiness. So the happiness still comes through. And I do use my work to kind of work through those hard times, but that's not the work that people see. that I keep for myself.
Yeah, that's the therapeutic stuff.
And I do try and find, sometimes I let some of that into my professional work to see, like, what happens where those two pieces come together. But I've always, like, as an adult, when I have needed to use my work to get through the more difficult times, I've tried to maintain that space of, like, what is that positive energy it's bringing me, because it's always, I've had to kind of hold it as that special place for myself, because it is that one place I can go to and be happy. And I need to maintain it as that. And I have always told myself, this is something that's been really important for me too, that if it ever becomes something that it's not happy, like if the work becomes too much pressure, or if it becomes, like, if I start hating it, I need to walk away.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's something that, that's too important for me. Because it can become, I think it can become hard, or, I don't know, hard's not the right word. What am I looking for? This is just like a simple example. My mom loved baking, and she and her friends started just a small business where they were baking. And they did it for about a year, and they were very successful. But it got to the point where they didn't like it anymore. It was just, fell out of love with the baking because they're baking the same things. And people really in our town loved what they were doing. And I think they could have taken it to the next level. But I think the monotony of baking like 10 certain cakes and cheesecakes and then washing the dishes and going through that whole process, they just they weren't enjoying what they were doing. And they made a decision that they wanted to enjoy what they were doing. So they walked away. And I think that was a valuable thing for me to see, that you want to continue to love what you're doing. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a good lesson to have for yourself, like early on. You know what I mean? Like that's something that a lot of people figure out sometimes too late.
Yeah, that it's okay. It's okay to build something to a certain point and look at it and say, like, I've done this amazing thing, but if I'm not happy in it, like that's the most important thing, that I continue to be happy in it, or to make changes to it. And I've done that too. Like, made changes to what I'm doing to make sure that I'm happy in the space that I'm in. Some that like life has imposed on me, and some that I've like had to step back and say, where can I find my happiness in this?
Yeah. So when did so you're a child and you're just like a maker. You're making things with your hands and you're doing all these gorgeous things. When did that start to turn towards illustration?
So I kind of had a quirky, weird path, but maybe a lot of people do. When I was in high school, I was on a pretty like typical track. I was a really good student and like kind of like well-rounded student. Mm-hmm. And I really loved my art classes. And in my high school years, I took, I think, what was probably a graphic design class. And my art teacher at that time saw a lot of potential in me, and he really encouraged me to keep doing that. But there was no word for it. Nobody was using the term graphic design. And while both of my parents were really encouraging me creatively, they always really supported that. There was like no term for what I was doing. So undergrad, I went to Penn State, and I just went in like generally, like I think I was really good at math, and I'm like, I think I'll be an accountant because I'm good at math, and I'm overall like I'm good at communication, and I think this would be a good long-term job and all this stuff. And I started in that like on the accounting track.
Yeah.
And I was in it for about a year, and I started taking an economics class, and I hated it, and I was doing very, very poorly. And my parents had a conversation with me. They're like, this isn't like you to do poorly at something, you usually really excel. What's going on? I just, I said, I hate it. I can't stand it. And I was really lucky because a friend of our family, she was a guidance counselor at Penn State. And it's really, at a school that size, sometimes it's hard to hook up with the right people.
Yeah.
And I went to go talk to her, and she was actually at the School of Arts and Architecture. And which was also another kind of like amazing coincidence. And I went to go talk to her, and she said, she started going like, what are you interested in? And I started talking to her about my creativity. And she's like, well, you have all these credits. She said, what about advertising? And we started going through the advertising, this like what you need to take there. And it was basically a business degree. It was a lot like accounting. I'm like, oh my God, I can't take a stat class. I can't do any more of this. I was really just burnt out. So she said, well, there's this thing called graphic design. She said, but you need to put together a portfolio. It's not guaranteed. You have to get accepted. It was kind of a different area than anything else at Penn State, because you're talking about a university that like you should be able to get into any school. My dad was a professor of chemical engineering at Penn State, so he's like, what do you mean you can't just get in? I'm like, I don't know, you need to like make a portfolio. But I felt like I'm going to try it. So that summer I took my first class, and I fell in love with it, and it was a really good fit. So I ended up getting in, and I graduated from the graphic design program there. And then I went on to graduate school. I went and worked for a couple of years, and then I went for graduate school out in California at CalArts. And what was really interesting at CalArts, which I didn't realize until I started illustration, is that's where I think I started like my illustration stuff, because CalArts was they were like on the forefront of the postmodern movement in graphic design. There was postmodern stuff going on in other areas of like arts and architecture, but they were doing it in graphic design. And what that meant was you could start looking at typography as illustration. You could start looking at composition as illustration. Like not everything had to be in a grid.
Yeah.
You could play with form and function. Like you could do all this stuff that graphic design was saying, like in modernism, which is what my undergrad degree was in, was saying everything had to be like gridded and all these rules. And CalArts was like, let's break some rules. Like you have to know the rules before you can break them, but like, let's break them. Let's see what happens. Let's start talking about like our history and like they were very much about talking about history, not just graphic design history, but history in general. And how does design reflect history? And how can we reflect back on ourselves? It was really, really fascinating because in the graphic design world, we weren't doing that. And that's more of like what you do in art. It was fascinating to me. So my mind was kind of blown out there, but so that was amazing. Then I went on to do more graphic design work. And fast forward, had a family, had some kids, which is awesome. And I kind of threw myself into every single like birthday party they had, like had all these amazing invitations and cakes. The cakes they had were amazing. Like I made them t-shirts. Like I just threw myself into everything creative about being a mom. Eventually we moved to the Massachusetts area, and my very close friend, Lisa, was being represented by Lila Rogers. And Lisa told me Lila was having a class for any of the artists that were in the Boston area, and would I want to take this class?
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, we just moved here. I have 2 small children. I don't have a babysitter. I'm not sure I can do it. And she's like, well, maybe you can get a sitter. And Lila she had only invited her artists. So she said for me to join, she would just need to see some work of mine, which she was basically doing just to see if I was like professional, if I was a nice person, if I could join the class. And that's kind of, I think, where the CalArts stuff came into play, because I had this design sensibility, which allowed me to come into the class. And the graphic design piece, all my graphic design years, I think of like taking an assignment and being able to just run with it. But what I didn't realize until quite a few years later, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Is that I actually had this mind that was ready to play with other artists, which I didn't know that was something that I had learned from my graduate experience.
So you liked like the collaboration of like talking about your art and talking about other people's art and being inspired by them?
Yeah, because I was really afraid to sit with other artists, because that's something I hadn't really done. I didn't really know I could do. Yeah. But I actually had experience in that. But I just didn't realize that I did.
Yeah, you didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. So what Lila was doing was kind of amazing at the time. Because of the internet at that time, if we can all think back about 10 years, a lot of the editorial jobs were going away. Because magazines were folding, and she was looking for what was the next thing so she could make sure that her artists had work. And she noticed that this whole surface design thing was just beginning. I think she said she went to like Michael's or something, and she noticed that there was scrapbooking was happening. I mean, scrapbooking isn't very big anymore, but at that time it was huge, and that there were patterns on all the papers. And she's like, my artist could do that. So the class was specifically like, how do we create these, patterns and create these collections? So I fell really kind of neatly into this group, because a lot of these projects were very graphic design driven, like create a collection around the holidays, 3 patterns with, this kind of theme. So there was the art component where I had to push myself drawing wise because I hadn't really sat and drawn per se. But the graphic design, I had my graphic design to fall back on because it was a project. There were parameters. There was problem solving. So for the artists, sometimes they had a harder time with the parameters piece, where that was like easy for me. But then the drawing piece was a little trickier. So I had to start finding ways to like define like what I was going to be drawing, and my style started evolving through that class. And by the end of the class, she asked me if I wanted to continue working with her. And I was about 45 minutes away from her studio at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let me see what I can do about the babysitter. But yes, because at that point, I was really looking for something for myself. I was at that point in motherhood where I felt like I'd given so much of myself to these birthday parties and school things, that this piece of myself that had been, and I would pick up some freelance jobs, but that I really needed something for myself. And that this was the opportunity that I needed to go after. So I said, sure, let's work on this. And yeah.
Yeah, we hear that from a lot of moms on here, that there seems to be, for a mom who is creative, especially, I'm sure it happens to all moms, but obviously we're talking to the creative ones, that it's like there comes I don't want to say breaking point, but we'll say it anyway. There comes like a breaking point where you do have to be creating again and making something for yourself. And Megan Buchanan put it that you have to do one thing in the day that doesn't get undone. So I always think that's very interesting.
I think I just needed to acknowledge that side of myself.
Yeah.
And I needed to feel like I had that. Yeah, I just needed to acknowledge that side of myself and be a part of something. I think something that was really interesting too was that sitting in a room it was all women, and they were so supportive. They were so wonderful. It was a wonderful group of women. And being in a group of women like that, they were all like, no matter what you brought in, even if people brought in a sketch, they'd be like, okay, well, let's talk about it. What were you thinking? It was really just about being together. And because I'm sure a lot of your listeners feel this way, like no matter where you're at no matter what point you're at in a project, no matter what point you're at in this field, like you can feel isolated in your work. So part of this class for Lila bringing everybody together at that time was to help everybody, like to see what the next step was for everybody to find work in this changing environment with the internet and editorial kind of going away.
Yeah.
Not completely, but changing. But part of it too was like, this is an opportunity to bring everybody together. Like, let's get everyone together because we don't get to see each other very often, and it feels good to have everyone in the same room. Yeah. And that feeling, I hadn't had that in so long, where there were just supportive women together. Yeah. And then on the flip side, I had moved quite a few times with my husband, and there were some things coming like to the surface with my marriage. And shortly after, we decided to go our separate ways. So it was really important for me to be able to like have these different pieces of myself that I was able to look at during that time, to say like, okay, you've got your mom self, you've got your creative self, you've got yourself that needs to take time to, take care of yourself and meditate and do this piece. You've got because like I had this new identity that was evolving at the same time. And a lot of pieces of myself that I needed to take care of. So it was a very interesting time for all of this to be happening.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and then I'm sure, you've got this, it sounds like it was the perfect time for you to find this community that could rally around you. And even in small ways. I mean, not that it's a small way, but even in ways like celebrating your art and talking about it and just being able to immerse yourself there. It sounds like that was the perfect time for that.
Yeah, and I think something I've always been really grateful for too is just having a job that I can be so flexible, that I can be there for the kids and, you know, pick them up after school and then go back to work when they're in bed. There are many jobs that afford a single mom that kind of flexibility. I always wondered in the early years, like how other moms do it that have to work, you know, a 9-to-5 job or 2 jobs, and how they're juggling all the different pieces. I felt very, very lucky that I had this kind of opportunity to work something where I could work whatever hours I needed to work to get stuff done. It was, and that I was really engaged with what I was doing. It was, the timing could not have been better. So to get my start with that, like thankfulness towards my work, that has never left me either. Like I feel very grateful to like be in an industry that helps like give me that kind of flexibility in my life.
Yeah.
To be available to my family in that way, and to be able to be engaged with my work in that way. So.
Absolutely. So
yeah,
a brief, because you're in these classes.
Yes.
You have this awesome community. Is this where you started to develop your style that then we would later know as, you know, the Suzy Ultman style?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy how fast it happened, but maybe it wasn't. So the reason that I brought up the divorce was because I'll give like full disclosure here. I've actually never talked about this. I've written about it like in bits, but so I drew some girls, and they were based on all the people closest to me, my closest girlfriends and my sisters that were helping me through the separation and divorce, that were very positive and really kept things focused on me and me rebuilding myself, and would be on the phone with me, or like they came out. I had 2 friends that came out at different times all the way from California to be with me for a few days. And so I was drawing them, and I would remember I'd like go in my studio. I had like a little room in the house that I called my studio, and had like really good light, and I'd like draw and like cry, and then I'd draw and then I'd cry. So I drew them, and so I feel like it was like maybe 6 months after the separation, Lila took that work to Surtex, which is the surface and textile show that happens at the same time as the stationery show. And Chronicle picked up those girls for Paper Doll Parade.
Oh, wow.
So that became so iconic with me, like those girls. And they came out of so much like hope and like thankfulness and friendship. And like those girls for me those are my friends. Those are my people that I still go to and know me best and have helped me through other times and like know who I am. And they're everybody's friends that they have. Like they're everybody's girlfriends. And for that to be picked up by Chronicle, and it wasn't just that, it was my editor at the time, a shout out to Jason. He saw something in those girls, and the fact that they did the paper doll stationery and like the die cuts and the side, like everything, like the whole product came out so well. And then we also did a set of prints called Home Sweet Home. And they're these like oversized print. It's like a book, and they can also be posters in babies' rooms.
Yeah. And
the whole set of prints, they're all based on the town that I was living in, Newburyport, which I was only in for about 2 years. The first year, almost year, I was there with my ex, and the second year was our separation, and then divorce, and then me moving to Columbus with the boys. And every drawing was like me walking around the town and kind of just saying goodbye to the town and taking in what had happened, and just kind of moving through things and just coming to peace with everything about the town. And so those two Chronicle projects mean a lot to me. and they really defined so much of my look. And so what I've tried to do since then is bring that meaning to everything I do in some way. So what I've moved forward with from that experience is just this idea of connecting with people in whatever they're going through, and bringing some sort of like happiness into their day, because everybody's going through something. I mean, that's kind of what that taught me. Like, people would see me and say hi. Like, I go into a coffee shop and they'd say hi, and they'd know, like, you don't know what people are going through. So just trying to impart some sort of happiness. And then when those two projects did finally come out, you know, I was in a different place, and people don't know the background wouldn't know the background behind those projects. They just see like, oh, Suzy got these great projects. And I'm like, yeah. And it's like, I think of what I was going through at the time, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, everybody has that story. So the most important thing is to just bring something of that to everybody, because everybody has those moments. So that's my overall hope, that I can do that with all of my work. So that's my look is my look, but what I'm trying to achieve is that feeling through what I do. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm over here having 1,000 aha moments, because for the few people who are CWL listeners who might not know your work, it's so cute. It's so light and airy and fanciful and adorable. And to know that it was born out of a time where you needed that, and you were, really dealing with stuff. That's amazing. It's amazing that you were able to, let these cute little flowers pop out of a soil that was maybe a little worn at the time. It's like, that's pretty fantastic.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So going forth from there is, I mean, not that you have to divulge what's going on behind all your artwork or anything, but did you kind of take that with you as like, this is a way that I can heal myself, and people are reacting to it?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I have some friends who've been through divorces, and I think that it definitely stopped me in my tracks, saying like, what do I need to do? Like, how do I need to look at my life to, like, live a fuller life? Like, what happened? Because my ex and I had been together for a long time, between like dating and being married. And we were together when we were young, and people could say like, maybe we were together too young and we'd changed. But at the end of the day, like, I feel like, at a certain point, things got away from us.
Yeah.
Or I got away from myself. And I was just like, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm engaged with myself in my own life? So I definitely took that forward, in my own life. And like, my first step was making sure that I was taking care of myself and taking care of the kids and being engaged with them. And I mean, I hope that shows in my work that I'm engaged with that.
Yeah.
It affects my work choices. I have this like really, the people have, I think it's more popular now, the decks of cards, like the inspiration decks. I had a friend, when I was going through the separation, she gave me this one card from her deck, and I ended up buying the whole deck. The artwork's a little bit cheesy. It's got like, if you can imagine, like airbrushed women and like unicorns
My
and stuff,
friend
but they're
got
great
one,
cards.
Yeah.
So there was one, and they say like they have a word on one side, and then they have like the definition on the other side. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there was one that says like, if it's not a yes, it's a no. And that one really struck me. And because I'd pick a card every day, and I remember I kept that one out for a long time, because I used to say yes a lot.
Yeah.
So these like, so when you're asking like stuff I took with me, so these cards came out of the separate, like I never like really, I feel like I wasn't being as thoughtful in my life before the divorce. I was just kind of like moving through things. And it is really interesting, because my illustration career was like beginning at the same time as the divorce. So like, all like the thoughtfulness. So this yes and no thing. So I started applying that to my life, like really stopping and thinking before I said yes to things. And what I've done in my career now is it's not if it's a yes, it's a no. It's if it's a yes, or if it's not a yes, it's a stop and think about it.
Yeah.
Pause. Because basically what I've learned is that what I'd learned out of that was that I need to listen to my gut more, that I was I was disconnected from my gut, and that we live in a very fast-paced world, and with email and texting and everything, social media, people can be somewhat reactive, and I can be reactive and feel like I need to email back very quickly. And that if something's pulling at me that doesn't feel like I really want to work with this person, but something in this email doesn't read right, or something about this project doesn't feel right, like take a day and assess why you're feeling that way. Am I feeling like, is the project scaring me because I've never worked on something of this size before, or this content, and my ego's nervous because I don't know if I can execute it? And if that's the case, then I need to do it because that will be a good challenge. Or am I nervous because their expectations seem like they're way too high, and that could be problematic down the road when we hit because I know how these projects go. My experience says this, and they have these expectations. And if I just have a conversation with them and kind of get a read, I'll know better. So what I've learned now is just to pause and like understand what that feeling is between yes and no.
That's I think that's amazing advice. I really do. Yeah. Because sometimes you just assume that because you have hesitation, it's a no and you shouldn't be doing it. But
right.
Sometimes you gotta get uncomfortable. But like you said, maybe it's something as simple as, I feel like their expectations are out of whack. That's something that you can address. And if they can't get their expectations in check, then you can say no with much more confidence in the whole scenario.
Yeah. And then there's another piece. If their expectations are out of whack and you don't feel comfortable addressing it, then you can also say no.
Yeah.
Because you have to think about because those are all pieces to think about. Because it's okay to give yourself a break sometimes and say, I'm worn out. I don't feel like talking to this client through this stuff again. Like, they're a difficult client, or I'm just tired and I can't go there. But you have to like take the time to figure out where you are in your space that day. And I just used to push through so much and not take that time. So I do that with everything. I mean, I do that. I build in time in the weekends. I just try to build in. I feel like culturally, we like fill up everything. And so I'm just constantly, and I have a partner who does the same, like we're in the same space together with that. We just try and build in as much time and space around things. So you just have space to think and remember to take that time to connect, and with ourselves, with each other. Because the better you make, I think if you can make those decisions on a daily basis, the better you feel about everything. And then you know what you're getting yourself into, and you don't get annoyed down the road. Like, why did that client do that? And you're like, well, I know why. Because when I took this project, I knew that was going to happen. And that's okay. like, because that's why I decided to take it. And that's the hurdle that's going to be there.
Yeah.
So
that's a great way to change your perspective on something too. I really like that.
I'm really trying to, that's like one of my big things I'm working on, because you can't change, that's that whole thing. You can't change other people. You can only, deal with your own reaction and how you take stuff. So yeah, that's stuff I've taken with me. It's definitely affected how I do projects, and I hope it's reflected in how my clients feel when they work with me. Because essentially we're in a service industry. So when they say, can you do this? I want to be able to say yes, or I would love to do that, but we agreed that this was like our schedule. So I'm going to need either more money or extra time, Yeah. Like, I want to be very amicable because I'm in a service industry, and I want to have good relationships with people, and I want them to go on for a long time. And I don't mind having hard, well, I don't know if they're hard conversations with clients. I don't mind. I just want to be able to talk to them about anything, and be straight up about stuff, because I think it's important, and that allows you to have long-term relationships with them. I think I've had a lot of clients for 8+ years, and I enjoy that. That's what I love about all of this. It's, is the relationships and what you build over the years.
Well, and you've not only had a lot of clients, but you've had a lot of big name clients. And I'm sure those are conversations, I don't know how you end up with these deals or anything, but
I don't either.
I didn't mean it in that.
I could tell your audience, you do this and then you do that. Now I have a few ideas.
Right, but I'm sure you have to be you can't go into a conversation with Target and be like, okay, whatever you want, because you're going to end up overselling yourself. And that's ridiculous. Right. Like, you have to be able to not feel like it's a hard conversation to have, to talk about compensation, to manage expectations.
Yes. So the initial, do you want to talk about the big client thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
Is this a good segue?
This is a good segue. Perfect.
So,
oh, except we lost you. Wow.
Little Rock.
Oh. Yeah, we lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, after you said, is this a good segue?
Okay. Okay. So the Chronicle books happened because of Lila Rogers, and my fabric, a lot of getting my foot in the door, it's because of my agency, because of their connections, and because of the way they brought a group of artists together. So I was amongst other artists that people were interested in. And so when they were showing at, Surtex, these companies would come because they were interested in, at that time, Lisa DeJean and Helen Dardick and Carolyn Gavin, and what do all these other artists have? And then I was the new kid on the block. So who is this and what does she have? Oh my gosh. So as part of that collaborative effort with all these other artists that were there. And that was a really amazing time because we were all holding each other up.
Yeah.
And so I got my foot in the door that way. Now, moving forward, I think it was quite a few things. My graphic design background has helped me in terms of my visual communication skills. So I have a certain way that I present my work. And when the times that I've been asked to teach some classes, some projects, what I try and work on with the students, I teach a project, but my main goal is actually to help them learn just this, because illustrators aren't typically taught how to present a professional project from sketch to finish. And I think it's really important, the better you can communicate to your client, they'll just want to keep working with you because they're really busy, and they need clear communication on every step. So that helped from, those are the beginning phases. Those are the presentation and communication things. In terms of negotiating, the agency, when I was a young illustrator, they were doing that part for me.
Okay.
So I didn't have to worry about that piece of things. But in terms of keeping the relationship moving with forward momentum, I kept communication continuing through sending holiday cards every year. I talk about the making thing. I'm very old school. I still send handwritten thank yous to everybody after a project. I send holiday cards. I love to keep that communication, and it comes from, for me, it's very authentic. It's very much like what I did as a kid. I was taught to write thank yous, so I still do it. So I'm hopeful they feel that it's authentic, but, so I think that helps kind of just shore up the relationship, that we have some sort of communication. And then in terms of the project, whenever something would come up, and this was from day one, that was not your typical situation, I would communicate directly with the client. There were times, where I would call my agent and say, hey, this is going on. What should I do? Just because I didn't know if it was something that, like how it should be addressed. And my agent would always say, do you want me to call them? And I'm like, no, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I wanted to learn, the ropes of the business. That was very important to me. And also, I just felt like it should come from me because it's my project. And I wanted to build a relationship with my client. And what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It happens.
Yeah. And I feel like I should be able to have any conversation.
Yeah.
So, and then the last piece is that, well, it's not the last piece. Another piece is that I am not afraid to pick up the phone. I know we all email everything, and there are times when email is really important. But if I feel like a project is going sideways, or if there's something that feels suspect to me, I will take that minute that we talked about earlier. I will take some time to think, like, what is my gut telling me right now? I just got this email, or I'm getting these emails, and things feel a bit funny with the project. Like, things do not feel like they're going right, or I feel like they're pushing me on the schedule, or we agreed to this and the art direction now feels like it's going a different way. Like, what do I need to do right now? And if I feel like it's a phone call because things can get misinterpreted with email, then I will call them directly. And sometimes I've surprised a client because, like, I can tell when I call them.
Yeah,
like,
I bet.
Surprised that it's actually a real person. But I think it's really important to remember that you can misinterpret a lot of emotion on an email.
Definitely.
Yeah. So and then in terms of the big client negotiating thing, so I'm actually now on my own. I've decided to, after 10 years with the agency, go out on my own. I've learned so much. The Little Rogers agency has been amazing, and I've learned so much from them. And I think the most important thing that I've learned from my agents is just to, like, sorry, I have to take a moment here.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, you have to value yourself, and you have to, I think that's really important. You have to value yourself, and you have to be okay having those business conversations. It's okay. Like, we are, as artists, we are valuable people to them.
Yes, definitely.
And you just have to know what the worth is of the project and be okay saying that. And the only thing you can do is set up boundaries. I don't know if that's the right word. I use the word boundaries a lot, but kind of set up the boundaries around your side of the project. So that means the fees, the schedule, the different, components of it, and be as clear as possible. And that way, when the client starts to go shift one way or another, you can say, like, hey, well, we agreed to this. What do you want to do? And at that point, it's up to you to gauge, like, how hard you want to come in to say, like, we need to charge a change fee, or we need to do this or that. And there's, like, a learning curve along the way for, I think, anybody doing this.
Yeah.
Every project's different, but you just cover as many bases as you can. And then you move along with the project. And there's so many people, like, you make friends along the way, you meet other artists, and you rely on other people to give you information, listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
There's so many people are really, I think, happy to help you out, I found.
Yeah, we've found that as well. Like, especially creative women who are really, like, they've made it to a certain level of success, we can say, or they're very confident in what they've done, they are always willing to help. Gosh, it's amazing. So definitely reach out to those people. And I feel like a lot of women, we always talk about the pricing thing on here, because I think artists can be bad at it. Women, you can double that up.
Absolutely.
You don't want to talk prices. You don't want to be difficult, because they need to want to work with you again, and you have to be agreeable and all those things. It's like, no, you have to be a champion for yourself. You have to be a champion for yourself.
You have to value yourself, yeah. And the thing is that if you value yourself, we're valuing everybody, because as soon as 1, 2, 10 people, 100 people start costing a project at like $200 and it's worth $1,000, it affects everybody.
Absolutely.
Because it brings the rate down for everybody. But I found, just within the little bubble of people that I follow on Instagram, I'll have a friend who will post like a great book on pricing, or I'll have a question about something and I'll, call a friend and I'll say, hey, have you done a project like this? Because for all the projects I've done, something will come up that I'm like, well, I've never done anything that had this to it or that to it. Or I'll have something come in that I'm like, that's really low, but it's got this benefit to it. Should I do that? And I'll just talk it through with somebody and I'll be like, what do you think? And I feel like nothing's ever super straightforward with what we do, but I think valuing yourself is probably the most important thing. Exactly what you said, like valuing yourself and not feeling like, that thing that we women have been
exactly
socialized to feel like we need to thank other people for hiring us. But, and that's the whole, like, if it's not a yes, it's a no. It's like, if they are not willing to pay you for what you're worth, then you need to be okay walking away from it. And this is something actually I've just recently walked into, which it fascinates me. So somebody will want to hire me to do something because they love my work. And then when I give them a cost for it, and I'll even say, like, this is a beginning rate, like, I'd love to work with you, but I don't hear back, or they potentially might want to walk away from it. And I think there's a reason that you want to work with me. And it's because I've been doing this for a long time. Like, there's a certain quality to it. Like, you just pay for it. Like, art, there's a reason that it costs a certain amount. And I don't cost any more than anybody else at my level. I know I don't, because I talk to my friends all the time. We all charge the same rates. There's a going rate for certain types of illustration. It's not like, one of us charges 10 times more than the other. There's just a flat rate. So it's just fascinating to me that a lot of people want art for a minimal cost. And I think that's something we just all need to wrap our heads around and just keep to our guns. We need to stick to our guns so that we all get paid what we're supposed to get paid.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there are people out there that are willing to pay it. It's hard work to find it. It is.
And there are a few female-dominated industries right now. Like, I can think of the quilting industry, where these women are really getting not paid to do these things. And I'm hoping that as influencer marketing and things like this, all these different things start to change in the ways of social media, that CWL is a big champion for everybody standing up and being like, no, this is the money I deserve. And I know I do. And I'm not being, well, we all know what we're going to be called. I'm not being a bitch. This is what I deserve. So it's like, we can do it. We can all stand up for ourselves, and we aren't making crazy demands. We just want to be paid. That's not something crazy.
Yeah, and I would say to any of the listeners out there, if you do get contacted by a big company and you are not sure what to do with a contract or something, call a lawyer. Like, I think it's worth paying a lawyer a couple hours to look at a contract, to make sure you're not missing anything. Even there are a couple agents that will work on an hourly fee.
That's a great advice.
Because there are just some things that you don't want to miss, that you don't want to get. They're not intentionally going to try and hurt you, but you don't want to get pulled into a contract that you thought like you were selling your artwork, let's say, to be used, for this project, and you're getting paid a certain amount of money for this project. And then you also thought you could use it like on your Etsy site. And then all of a sudden you find out, no, like it, they now own the rights outright and they don't want you using it for anything else. Then you're really disappointed and upset. So, if you're not like familiar with like language or what certain things mean, it's definitely worth the money, like the first couple of times, to hire professionals for that stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, even for me, having agents for almost 10 years, there's still language, and I'm like, wait, I forget what that means. Like,
yeah.
I need a refresher. Like worldwide exclusive, wait, and in that area, and wait a second. And again, like this is getting into some nitty gritty, but those are other ways to negotiate fees with people. Like have you guys talked about like exclusive, non-exclusive, stuff like that?
No, we really haven't.
Oh, you haven't? So this is just a small thing, but if somebody wants wants your art exclusively, that means that you can't use your art for anybody else. So if you have this pattern and they want to buy it and they want it exclusively for their company, then you can't use it for anybody else. But if you give them a non-exclusive, then you can use it on fabric, you can use it on toys, you can use it. So you can make money off of it in various like different like levels of, and that's really how you want to work your licensing, so that you can, make as much money off of each piece as possible. So that's another way to negotiate a fee. Like if there's a small company that calls you, that sees you on Instagram, and let's say they're like, we're, this like startup apparel company, and we love your patterns, and we want to buy them exclusively because we don't want anybody else to have them, but we only have, $400.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I'd love to work with you. What if we do a non-exclusive, because you don't have a lot of money, and that will allow me to shop these around other places, but I can give you like for the first 6 months of your launch, like I won't shop it to anybody else. You can have it for 6 months, and then I'm going to like show it to other people. So you can negotiate things like that too.
I love that. That's a great tidbit to have. So
yeah,
for the most part, the bigger companies, are they going to do exclusive contracts with you?
Potentially. Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on, yeah, I think a bigger company like Chronicle, Land of Nod, they're going to want exclusives because they're, Land of Nod is no longer, but Creating Kids. Yes, they will want exclusives.
Okay. I love that though. That's a great way to, because you might really want to work with this company, or you might really want that $400, but you just can't give them everything they're asking for that $400. So
right.
That's an awesome way to work around that, especially when you just start working with companies. I love that.
Yeah. And then there's the whole royalty thing, which is a whole other, it's a whole other thing, but you can, that's something that they then have to keep track of, but then they don't have to pay you as much up front. They can pay you kind of like based on how well the product does, which it's great for like a big company, like publishers do it. So publisher will give you an advance, and then they'll give you royalties against the advance. So if they give you like a $500 advance, then once your book makes $500, you start getting royalties. So for a small company, again, let's say this apparel company doesn't have a lot of money. You can say, well, why don't you give me $100, and then I want like a 5% royalty. So once the apparel sells, once they hit $100, they can give you, you get a 5% royalty, which might look good to them because then they don't have to give you it's based on sales, but then they have to keep track of sales and get you royalty checks every, quarter, which is a lot of admin, and you have to follow up with them, and you might not ever see your royalties. Big companies they have, whole accounting departments that take care of that.
Right. So
I wouldn't suggest it, but, I have tried to go there.
Yeah.
When I was really trying to like help a company try and figure out what to do, but it ended up not even happening. So I wouldn't suggest it at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's always an option. Yeah.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for that awesome advice. We'll have to do an episode full of awesome Suzy advice. We'll have to snag you for another episode.
Yeah.
So if you're ready... What?
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Of course you can.
I just want to loop back really quickly. Since we're saying awesome stuff, I want to go back to the community thing because you brought it up that people are really willing to give advice. That's something that's taken me a really long way through all of this is the community. Especially, I mean, I don't want to discount my male artist friends who are out there, but it has generally been female artists in different shapes and forms, whether it's been like in person for coffees or in professional groups or people I've met through Instagram and we become friends over the phone and then met up in person. But it's really been, it's been my lifeline. And I always tell people, like, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah.
Especially if you're at your like lowest point, that's usually the time you should reach out.
Yeah. I love that. I had always been told like, oh, we'll just take a female entrepreneur out for coffee and she'll talk to you about these things. And I genuinely thought it was BS until I started doing this podcast. And then, you know, the level of artists who are like, absolutely, I want to help inspire more women. Yeah. Then I realized, holy crap. Like, yeah, somebody might turn you down, but there's going to be a lot of women out there who are like, absolutely, let's talk.
Yeah, I've gone out to coffee with people. I've felt badly when I haven't gone back to people that have asked me to go out, but I definitely, I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy when people will go out with me.
Yeah.
I need help. I need advice and friendship and just, I love talking to like people of different generations, younger, older. I enjoy talking to men too. But just anybody that has like any feedback in life, it's just great to connect and be connected. And I do try and use social media as if it's social and respond to people. So
I love it. Yeah, it's serious. Like, especially we've had so many women come on this show that are like, and then once a week I will go on my Instagram and I'll help answer any business questions people might have. So the resources are out there. You just got to go looking for them.
Yeah. One of my closest friends, she reached out to me, I think it's been almost 3 years now, on Instagram asking me about Surtex. And I'd been following her and I was like, I like her work. And I'm like, hey, do you want to just talk on the phone? Because I think it'll be too hard. It was too much I couldn't like direct message her back. It was too much information. And we, like, our first conversation, we're like, we're going to be friends. Yeah. And it's been great. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time, but I'm like, man, if Instagram like makes me a couple of like, I've met two like really close friends on Instagram, and it's crazy. Never would have thought that would have happened. I did not go onto Instagram thinking I would meet people. It's really interesting, you know. And then there are other people that I just like conversate, like through the medium, you just have conversations with, and it's so nice, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And now you're part of the Creative Women's League community. I mean,
yay,
great one here. So
yeah.
Okay, so if you're ready, I'm ready to head into 3 CWL musts.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is, what is one thing every badass woman should read, watch, or listen to?
Okay, this was kind of hard. So do you just want one from that entire category?
Yeah, you can do it however you want to do it.
Okay, so I think I'm going to do my most recent thing that I watched.
Okay. Which
was seeing Allred, which is on Netflix.
Okay.
And it is, it's about Gloria Allred. And I was blown away. It's about the women's movement. It's about her place in the women's movement. And it's really great.
I love that. I haven't seen it on there. I'm going to have to watch it. That's a great one. Okay. And who is one woman we should all go follow right now?
All right. So I really love, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the poet. I hope that I don't totally massacre her name.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and say it. Naira Waheed.
Okay.
Do you know her?
I don't think I do.
She is, it's one of my favorite, it's one of my favorite feeds. So I'm going to spell it for you. Should I spell it for you? Do you want me to send it to you?
You can send it to me after, and then
I'll send it to you after.
I'll be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Everybody can just click over to her.
Yeah.
So she's a poet, that shares her awesomeness on Instagram.
Yeah.
I love it.
Every time, one comes up, it stops me in my tracks. So.
Oh, I love it. I love when something just really reaches into your core like that.
Yeah.
And what is one mantra, quote, or affirmation that you lean on often?
All right, this was hard because I have a lot.
Yeah.
I leave Post-its on my bathroom mirror. And so I'm just, I actually have a top 5, but I'm going to go with the one that's on my mirror, which kind of hooks into what we talked about earlier. Okay. And it's right now it's go with the flow.
Yeah.
So what that is for me is, it's not really, I guess it's a little bit about being laid back, but it's also more about, not resisting what's in front of me. So whatever's in front of me, just moving with it. And if I'm not moving with it, being self-reflective and kind of understanding why can't I move with it? What's going on with me that I'm not moving with it? Because every day is really different. And, you wake up in a different mood every day, and each day is different. And if you can't go with the flow, what's going on? Is it you? Is it something in the day? And just trying to kind of understanding that so I can be more in the flow.
Yeah, I love that. I tend to be a control freak.
Me too.
I tend to be a bit of a control freak, and I tend to be a bit, I'm really laid back and then all of a sudden get super wound up about something. So I love that. That's something that you definitely have to look into and be like, okay, why now am I resisting this? Sometimes for me, it's just because I'm hangry. So a sandwich fixes it. But sometimes, like you said before, there's a nervousness there. And why is that?
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I love it so much. Yeah. Suzy, I have loved talking with you. This has been so great.
Oh, thanks. This was my first podcast ever. So thank
Yay!
you. You made it very comfortable.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. So before you go, can you tell everybody where to find you?
Oh, you can find me at SuzyUltman.com. You can find me on Instagram at Suzy Ultman. It's pretty straightforward. SuzyUltman.
Awesome. And like I said, in the show description, there will be links so everybody can go see the adorable things you create every day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful day.
You too. Yeah. That is some serious advice there at the end. I love the thought of hiring an agent at an hourly rate to help you through some of these things. Remember, you are not in this alone. You have phenomenal women out there who will help you every step of the way. I'm sure a hell of a lot of phenomenal men who will do the same thing. And of course, if you can't find somebody or you don't want to go asking, get that agent for an hourly rate. It's awesome. Thank you for listening to another wonderful episode of the Creative Women's League. I appreciate you so much. I hope you subscribe to the podcast and join us over on Instagram. Join us in that Facebook group. You've been here for me listening, and now I want to be here for you and support you as much as I possibly can. My heart is always so full. I'm like a full-on nerd at the end of every one of these episodes. I just feel so overwhelmed with like excitement and motivation and love for each and every one of you. So thank you guys. I will see you on Monday. Mwah. You're still here? It's over. Go home.